July 2002. A quiet corner of Orange County. Dust settling on a summer evening. Children playing in a courtyard that should have been safe. Until a car rolled in. Slow, deliberate, and in a single heartbeat, a little girl vanished, taken by someone no one expected. Someone who seemed to come from nowhere and left an entire community frozen in fear. Who was he? And what darkness pushed him to strike here? Welcome to True Crime Vault. Subscribe, like, and turn on notifications. And today, we reopen the case of Samantha Renan. The child was reportedly kicking and screaming, desperate to break free, as the abductor violently seized her and threw her into his vehicle. The scene left neighbors paralyzed with fear and disbelief. "We are absolutely stunned," one resident articulated, the shock evident in his strained voice. "This is a truly tight-knit community. We all know each other. We trust one another implicitly. I never, in my wildest dreams, imagined such a heinous act could ever unfold here." Stanton, California, a quiet, unassuming town nestled in Orange County, approximately 26 miles southeast of the sprawl of downtown Los Angeles. Samantha Renan, a vibrant little girl, was one of Stanton's beloved residents. Her mother, Erin, a dedicated analyst for British Petroleum in Long Beach, had specifically chosen the Smoke Tree condominium complex as their home. It was meant to be a sanctuary, a secure, family-centric environment. The neighborhood was notoriously close-knit, defined by an easy camaraderie, the kind of place, as one resident fondly recalled, where the garage doors are always open, and people use the driveway as their communal patio for socializing. The complex was perpetually buzzing with the activity of many young families. Children were constantly running, laughing, and playing games in the central courtyard. Samantha was frequently among them, reveling in the freedom of the safe space. When her mom returned from work, Samantha's routine was to hide, waiting for the perfect moment to leap out and surprise her. Erin, however, always issued the firm, loving reminder, "You must never leave the courtyard." Samantha, Erin lovingly stated, was everything a child should be: kind, gentle, full of love, and simply happy. The day that shattered this peace was July 15, 2002. At 6:30 p.m., 5-year-old Samantha was outside, playing a board game with her 6-year-old friend, Sarah. Samantha was under the watchful eye of her grandmother, while her mother and her mother's boyfriend were at their jobs. As the girls sat innocently engrossed in their game, a green sedan slowly cruised past them. It circled the entire block and then returned, its pace deliberate and unnerving. A man emerged from the car and approached the girls, with a seemingly benign question. Had they seen a lost puppy? He claimed he was searching for his missing chihuahua. Samantha, driven by natural curiosity, asked how large the dog was. It was then, without warning, that the facade dropped. The man lunged forward, seized Samantha, and violently dragged her toward the waiting vehicle. Samantha thrashed, screamed, and fought desperately against his grip. She managed to shout one frantic plea to her best friend, "Go get my grandma," before she was shoved into the car. The door was brutally slammed shut, and the driver accelerated away. In that terrifying instant, countless lives were irrevocably changed forever. A young child, drawn out into the clutches of a stranger by a lie. A live report immediately aired the latest harrowing details of the kidnapping. The victim was reportedly kicking and screaming, resisting fiercely, as the kidnapper grabbed her and tossed her into his car. The reporter stated, summarizing the horrifying scene. "Right now, an extensive and intensive search operation is underway." Samantha and her friend had been playing on the quiet residential street within the Smoke Tree townhomes complex. At approximately 6:30 that evening, a man drove up, requesting their help in locating his missing dog. When Samantha leaned in to inquire about the size of the animal, he suddenly grabbed her and fled the scene. Samantha's grandmother, who was just inside the apartment and tragically saw nothing, was alerted by the surviving friend's screams. The initial shockwave hitting the neighborhood was massive. "Neighbors are truly shocked," a local resident reiterated. "This is a tight-knit place where everyone relies on one another. I can't comprehend what kind of sick individual would do something like this. What is wrong with them? I'm utterly devastated. Personally, I never thought a crime of this magnitude could ever touch our community. Everyone here basically watches out for each other, and when something like this happens, it's both heartbreakingly depressing and profoundly shocking." Samantha Renan was born on July 26, 1996, to her father, Derek, and her mother, Erin. though Aaron and Derek later separated, with Derek moving far away to Sunderland, Massachusetts. He maintained an extraordinarily close relationship with his daughter. "I loved her beyond measure," Derek recounted. Speaking of the constant stream of letters and packages he sent her, and the precious time they spent together during her visits. Samantha adored sunflowers, captivated by their bright faces. She loved superheroes, dressing up in princess costumes, and especially idolized the Disney movie Hercules. A poster of Hercules, her ultimate hero, was proudly displayed above her bed. She was an unusually intelligent and advanced student who had just completed the first grade. Now, a massive, frenzied search effort was mobilized to bring her home. From the very moment of her abduction, the investigation was infused with a desperate, crushing sense of urgency. It wasn't just because she had been taken in broad daylight, with her grandmother mere feet away and her friends standing right beside her, but because with every passing second, the chances of finding her alive diminished. A detailed description was immediately issued. She was wearing a simple white blouse, red checkered shorts, and pink sandals adorned with little green frogs. A tearful public plea was made by her family. "Please, ask your captor to let you go. We love you. She is my little Linda. Please let her go." Search teams, supported by hundreds of frantic volunteers, continued the massive manhunt that had already consumed the region. Parents in Stanton were suddenly paralyzed with terror. This neighborhood, the place they had always relied upon as safe, a friendly little city, suddenly felt dark, heavy, and treacherous. Despite being only 6 years old and having just witnessed an unimaginably terrifying act, Samantha's friend, Sarah, displayed remarkable courage and clarity. Shaking through her shock, she managed to furnish investigators with an incredibly detailed description of both the man who had taken Samantha and the distinctive pale green car he was driving. She described the man as having dark hair slicked straight back and a prominent black mustache. Her detailed account enabled police artists to rapidly produce a composite sketch, which was instantly disseminated to the public. Within hours, law enforcement officers were establishing roadblocks and stopping hundreds of vehicles that even vaguely matched the description of the sedan Sarah had seen. Her ability to recall these specifics in the face of trauma proved to be an extraordinary push forward for the investigation, yielding one of the earliest and most vital clues in the hunt for Samantha's kidnapper. Tips began to pour in from across the region, and before long, the horrific story had seized national attention. The fact that she had been snatched in broad daylight shook the community to its core, forcing many parents to intensely question the genuine safety of their streets. People clung desperately to hope, praying with everything they had left. But just 24 agonizing hours after her abduction, that fragile hope was brutally extinguished. A frantic 911 call came in from a hang glider who had spotted something disturbing in a dense, wooded area remote site near Lake Elsinore, close to the intersection of the Killing Truck Trail and the Ortega Highway, approximately 50 miles from Samantha's home. The caller was audibly traumatized, his voice often too shaken and choked with fear to speak clearly. "Oh my God, we found a dead body. Please hurry," he pleaded. "I'm so scared. It's a little kid. It's a baby," the caller stammered, adding, "I think it might be the little girl from the news." "I'm sorry," he apologized, revealing he had a 3-year-old child himself. "Please hurry. I'm scared, and I just want to get out of here." As his panic escalated, the dispatcher desperately urged him to remain as calm as possible, assuring him that investigators were already en route and would arrive as quickly as they could. Despite the frantic searching and the fervent prayers, the investigators' most agonizing fears were now realized. The body was that of Samantha Runan. The subsequent autopsy revealed she had been sexually assaulted and had suffered at least 2 severe blows to the head, which caused cerebral swelling. The pathologist determined that the primary cause of death was mechanical asphyxiation due to compression of the neck, with the blunt force trauma to the head contributing significantly. The pathologist could not definitively identify the object or method used to compress the neck. Additionally, the manner in which her body had been left posed in a graphically suggestive sexual position was a terrifying detail, one that forensic experts immediately stated indicated the involvement of an experienced sexual predator. FBI agent Richard Garcia later commented that the way the killer had disposed of the body suggested a deeply disturbing message. The fact that it wasn't buried or hidden the way it was left, it was almost like a calling card, a challenge, Garcia explained. It was the killer signaling, "I'm here, and I'm coming back again." That's why we believed this person posed a clear threat to strike again. It was estimated that Samantha had died roughly between 8 p.m. on July 15th and 2nd a.m. on July 16th. She was only 1 week away from celebrating her 6th birthday. Erin had already purchased most of her presents: a set of Lincoln Logs, a dinosaur puzzle, and a brand new dress for one of her cherished Barbie dolls. The remains were officially identified by Samantha's grandmother through photographs. Sheriff's officials noted that the prompt discovery of the body was grimly advantageous, raising high expectations for significant forensic evidence. Both recovered from the scene and from Samantha's body evidence they hoped would lead them directly to her killer. More than 500 FBI agents were immediately deployed to assist, and the investigation, which had tragically transitioned from a search for a kidnapper to a hunt for a killer, was officially intensified. When it came time to address the media, Orange County Sheriff Michael Corona chose an unconventional tactic. He stared directly into the cameras and spoke not to the public, but to Samantha's murderer, issuing a direct and chilling warning. "Don't sleep, don't eat," Corona commanded, his voice shaking with restrained fury. "Because we are coming after you. We will utilize every single resource available to us until we bring you to justice." Yet, while his words were aimed at the suspect, it was the local residents who found themselves unable to find peace. Terror had utterly consumed the community. Garage doors that had once stood perpetually open, symbolizing the neighborhood's trust, now remained firmly shut. A community that had always felt so inherently connected suddenly retreated, becoming nothing more than a series of private properties hidden behind locked gates. More than 2,000 tips had flooded in, but the police desperately needed the decisive break that would alleviate the paralyzing public fear. That break finally materialized, thanks to the courage and memory of Samantha's friend, the sole witness to the abduction. The composite sketch of the man who stole her friend was plastered everywhere. Soon, investigators would finally be able to attach a name to that sinister face. A woman named Tammy recognized the person in the drawing and contacted the police, suggesting the man they were searching for might be Alejandro Avila. The 27-year-old, standing 6 feet 2 inches tall, bore a striking and terrifying resemblance to the composite sketch. Bringing an intense 4-day manhunt to a dramatic conclusion, Orange County Sheriff's deputies arrested him. Avila was taken into custody after a thorough search of his Lake Elsinore apartment and nearly 2 hours of grueling questioning on suspicion of kidnapping and murder. At the time of the arrest, he was living with his sister Alvivera in an apartment on Riverside Drive in Lake Elsinore. His mother, Adelina, and his other sister, Adelita, lived in the same complex, a location ominously just 10 miles away from where Samantha's body had been discovered. On the day Samantha was abducted, Alejandro was expected to prepare dinner for his family, with the meal scheduled for between 6 o'clock and 6:30 p.m. instead of staying home. However, he spent the entire afternoon and evening driving across Southern California. Bank and transaction records later established that he withdrew cash from a Bank of America ATM in Lake Elsinore at 5:18 p.m. over the next several hours. He stopped twice at different gas stations before eventually checking into a Comfort Inn shortly before 9 p.m. to verify his timeline. Investigators meticulously retraced his entire route exactly 1 week later, starting at the precise minute he made his ATM withdrawal. Along the way, they stopped at every key location connected to the case: the Smoke Tree condominium complex, where Samantha was kidnapped; the remote site where her body was found; and both service stations he had visited that night. When investigators performed this test drive, they calculated the total distance from the Bank of America branch to the Comfort Inn, including all the key stops, to be approximately 202 miles. The direct driving time would have been about 3 hours and 24 minutes, or 3 hours and 40 minutes when factoring in the required stops. This journey was perfectly consistent with a man who had been at the Smoke Tree condominium complex around the time Samantha was kidnapped, traveled to the remote area to dispose of her body, and then checked into the hotel. During the test drive, the investigative team reached the complex at 6:17 p.m., replicated the immediate stops, and arrived at the Comfort Inn at 8:57 p.m., a timeline that mirrored the events of July 15th with disturbing accuracy. Alejandro's sister later testified that he was, in fact, familiar with the remote area where Samantha's body was discovered. She even recalled that they had visited that same desolate location once to watch a meteor shower. The day after Samantha was abducted, Alejandro had told his sister he had spent the previous day at the beach. During their conversation, however, she noticed a fresh, deep scratch on the inside of his knee. He attempted to explain it away, claiming he had caught himself on the leg of a baby gate at home. His sister noted that the baby gate was made of smooth plastic and possessed no sharp edges that could possibly have inflicted such an injury. Authorities soon announced they had collected substantial physical evidence, including DNA, conclusively linking Avila to the crime. His 1994 Ford Thunderbird matched key parts of the description provided by Samantha's friend, and investigators confirmed that the vehicle's tires were consistent with tracks found near the isolated site where Samantha's body was discovered. Most damningly, DNA consistent with Samantha's genetic profile so unique that it would be expected in fewer than one person in a trillia, was discovered inside his car. Additionally, DNA matching Alejandro's own genetic profile was recovered from scrapings taken from beneath Samantha's fingernails, with a probability of occurring in only one person out of 600 million. This evidence strongly and definitively suggested a physical, desperate struggle between the two of them. Alongside the tire tracks, investigators also found shoe prints and a single bare footprint near Samantha's body. None of the shoes recovered from his apartment under the search warrant matched those impressions. However, surveillance footage from one of the gas stations he had visited that evening showed Avila wearing what appeared to be a distinct pair of athletic shoes. Records from a local shoe store confirmed that, in September 2001, he had purchased this exact pair of shoes in size 12, though investigators later found the shoebox during the search of his apartment. The shoes themselves were conspicuously missing. What made law enforcement officers even more concerned was Avila's dark history. He had previously been tried and later acquitted in 2001 over the alleged sexual abuse of two young girls. His mother fiercely maintained that those allegations were fabricated by a former girlfriend seeking revenge. She believed that her son's arrest in Samantha's case stemmed entirely from lingering suspicion surrounding that earlier acquitted case rather than any new evidence. She vehemently denied her son was capable of committing such a crime. "I don't think my son did anything," she insisted. She described him as a man who was gentle with children, noting that he had become especially cautious after his previous trial, never allowing himself to be alone with kids. "He's never aggressive," she stated. "He's very good with little kids." She, too, remembered seeing scratches on his legs, marks that investigators noted were highly consistent with the struggle Samantha was believed to have put up, but his mother adamantly maintained they were from the children's safety gate. She was convinced her son had been unfairly targeted and provided him an alibi, claiming he was shopping at a local mall. He, too, denied any involvement, echoing his mother's statement that he had been shopping when Samantha was kidnapped. His mother also recalled a chilling conversation she had shared with her son before his arrest. They were watching television coverage of Samantha's disappearance. "I said they should get that person and tie him up alive and burn him," she recalled. Abala responded. "What about the electric chair?" "No." His mother dismissed the idea because he's not going to suffer that much. Sheriff Corona publicly affirmed that law enforcement had absolutely no doubt they had arrested the correct person. He struggled visibly to contain his deep emotions as he described the case as one that had profoundly affected him personally. "I told you we would hunt you down," he declared, addressing the cameras. "If you thought for 1 minute we were kidding, tonight, you know we were deadly serious." Following his arrest, people once again flocked to gather outside Samantha's apartment complex, leaving behind masses of flowers, teddy bears, cards, and personal tributes, forming a massive, makeshift memorial. An estimated 250 people stood hand in hand, praying, grieving, and comforting one another in silent vigil. Samantha's mom, Erin, was visibly moved by the overwhelming outpouring of support. Speaking through tears, she urged the crowd to look after one another, specifically asking parents not just to protect their own children, but to look out for all children. Samantha's father echoed Erin's statement. "Please watch your children," Derek implored through his tears. "Keep an eye on them. Don't let them out of your sight. I will think of her when I wake up every day. I will think of her when I go to bed. I will think of her all day long. I love you dearly. I miss you, Samantha." One critical detail detectives sought to determine was whether Alejandro Avila had any prior familiarity with the apartment complex. According to the Associated Press, a man named Luis, the foster brother of Alejandro's former girlfriend, told reporters that Avila had indeed visited the complex before. Luis stated that Alejandro had gone there to see his former partner's 11-year-old daughter. The child's mother said she deeply feared him and now suspected he may have visited the complex previously with the specific intention of taking her daughter. "I think he went there to get my baby," she concluded. "But instead, he took this little girl." Alejandro Avila was officially charged with murder, kidnapping, and 2 counts of forcible lewd acts on a child. Prosecutors immediately announced they would pursue the death penalty, citing special circumstances attached to the charges. The Orange County District Attorney made a chilling promise to the public. "I do want to make one thing very clear. Anyone who commits an act like this in Orange County will either die in prison of natural causes or be executed." It was now time for the community to say a final goodbye to Samantha. The cathedral was packed to capacity, drawing mourners of every age and background who had traveled great distances to pay their respects to the little girl lost to violence. "Nothing can bring our baby back," Erin said, her voice catching with emotion. But knowing that her death was handled with the utmost integrity, and that her short life was cherished by so many, does bring some solace. "We are overwhelmed by the love people have shown Samantha. We always knew she had a gift for the world, but it never occurred to us that her greatness would be realized in her death." The trial of Alejandro Avila would prove to be an extremely difficult and traumatic ordeal for all involved. Yet the prosecution's case was formidably strong. They stated clearly that phone and financial records placed him directly in the immediate area at the precise time of the abduction. Furthermore, DNA matching his profile was found underneath Samantha's fingernails, a signature of the struggle. In his opening statement, defense attorney Philip Zaluki argued that the DNA evidence linking his client to the crime was inherently unreliable. He claimed that the samples taken from beneath Samantha's fingernails had been improperly collected and pointed to what he described as inconsistencies in witness statements that ultimately led investigators to prematurely focus their entire investigation on his client. In speaking to reporters, Assistant District Attorney David Brent forcefully dismissed the allegation that investigators had planted any evidence, labeling the claim as utterly outlandish. Judge William Froberg made a key ruling, allowing testimony from the two girls involved in a 2001 sexual abuse case, despite his acquittal in that instance. A third young girl, who also alleged she had been abused, was permitted to testify as well. One of these girls was the daughter of his former girlfriend. She testified that when she was around 7 years old, Avila would sometimes watch her while her mother worked night shifts. She stated that he would abuse her while he was supposed to be caring for her. This repeated on several occasions over the course of a year, and she tearfully said she also witnessed him abuse her cousin. As the jury knew, he had been charged and tried for these acts, but since there was no physical evidence, it had previously been their word against his, leading to the acquittal. His sister offered perhaps the most damaging testimony about his state of mind. She recalled that after his acquittal, they were watching the film Double Jeopardy and he allegedly told her, chillingly, "I could do anything I want to that little girl, and I can't be charged for it because of double jeopardy." His former girlfriend testified that during their relationship, he showed little interest in intimacy and sometimes requested that she dress in what was referred to as junior-style clothing. Another man also testified that Alejandro had once been his roommate, and upon Avila moving out, child sexual abuse imagery was discovered in his bedroom. The third girl to accuse him said that when she was 11, she had been abused by him, and she recounted that he threatened her, saying that if she told anyone, someone could be killed. Prosecutors asserted their belief that Samantha was murdered specifically in an attempt to prevent him from ever facing similar accusations, again to permanently silence a witness. After obtaining a search warrant, a computer had been seized from his sister Adelita's apartment. She testified that she had never accessed inappropriate material on it, and her mother did not know how to use the internet. However, Alejandro had complete access. An investigator specializing in computer-related offenses analyzed the machine. He described recovering numerous images of children engaged in a wide variety of sexually abusive acts. These files had been deleted, but he was successfully able to recover them. At 4:43 a.m., on July 14, 2002, the day before Samantha was kidnapped, somebody had used that computer to print a multi-page story involving an adult male abusing young children. The investigator was also able to uncover a record of a chat room conversation from someone using that computer under the pseudonym Girl Lover and a person located in Finland. Both participants expressed a preference for girls under the age of 12. The person in Finland asked what it was like living in California. Girl Lover chillingly replied, "I live 4,000 feet in the mountains, where you can do anything to little kids." After nearly 9 hours of deliberation spread over 2 days, an Orange County Superior Court jury, composed of 8 men and 4 women, returned with a unanimous verdict. The jury found 30-year-old Alejandro Avila guilty of Samantha's kidnapping, sexual assault, and murder. As the court clerk read the verdicts aloud, Erin gasped and broke down into uncontrollable tears. Across the jury box, 2 jurors were also seen weeping, one of them gently rocking back and forth. At the defense table, Alejandro sat hunched between his attorneys, staring blankly downward, displaying no visible emotion. His public defender could be seen with tears welling in her own eyes. The court announced that the jury would reconvene the following Wednesday to determine his sentence, whether he would face the death penalty or life in prison without the possibility of parole. The fact of the matter is that one's down. But my baby is still gone, Aaron said in a powerful statement after the verdict. And there are still going to be children victimized if we don't do something to stop it. So, I have to beg you all to help me make sure that we can stop these crimes against our children. Standing beside Aaron after the verdict was Sheriff Michael Corona, who genuinely struggled to hold back his emotion as he thanked Aaron for her incredible grace and strength. He specifically thanked her for not holding it against them, for not being able to bring her daughter home alive, and for believing in us and becoming part of our family. The ex-girlfriend, whose daughter had previously accused Avila of sexual abuse, said, "Justice can finally be served, not only for my daughter and my niece, but for Samantha." She reiterated her strong belief that he was looking for her daughter that day, as her daughter used to live in the complex only a few doors away from the Renang family. "In my opinion," she concluded, "he was going there to look for my daughter. I believe he was utterly obsessed with her." Reflecting on the initial trial involving her daughter, Aaron had declared, "I told the jurors they made a mistake, and it is only a matter of time before he does this again." Speaking later on, Larry King lived. A heartbroken Aaron publicly laid the blame squarely on every single juror who had chosen to let him walk free. Every juror who sat through that initial trial and chose to believe the word of this man over the testimony of those innocent little girls. Reflecting on the circumstances of that previous trial, Superior Court Judge Robert B. Spitzer later confided in the Los Angeles Times that the evidence beyond the statements provided by the children themselves regarding what had actually transpired had been exceptionally sparse. However, the prosecutor from that first case, Paul Dickerson, maintained that the acquittal had always weighed heavily upon his conscience. "I felt deep down the guy was guilty, and I did absolutely everything within my power to secure a conviction," Dickerson stated, expressing the frustration of a justice denied. But with the long-awaited conviction now finally secured in Samantha's case, the trial was poised to transition into its next, most critical phase, sentencing. Starting the following Wednesday, the jury would bear the agonizing responsibility of deciding this man's ultimate fate. Would he be sentenced to death, or would he spend the rest of his life incarcerated? Aaron was granted the solemn, harrowing opportunity to address her daughter's murderer directly in court. Samantha fought. "I know with every fiber of my being that she fought you. I know she looked right at you with those enormous, amazing brown eyes, the ones that held so much life, and still, you wanted to kill her. I simply cannot understand that malice. I never will." His defense team pleaded with the jury to reject the death penalty, putting forth the argument that the heinous crime was not a deliberate, calculated act of premeditation, but rather an impulsive outburst, a tragic reaction profoundly shaped by a deeply traumatic and violent upbringing. Alejandro's life, they argued, was a chaotic narrative, marked relentlessly by instability, systemic poverty, and unbridled violence. In 1989, his own father was arrested for the abuse of his children, resulting in the young ones being forcibly removed from the home. His father, Rafael, would also eventually be convicted of fatally shooting a neighbor when Alejandro was still just 17 years old, and Rafael later pleaded guilty to manslaughter in that case. Years after that, his brother, Juan, was discovered dead in Mexico, having suffered a fatal gunshot wound to the back of his neck. In the sterile environment of the courtroom, his defense team painted a devastating portrait of a man born into a family that had been impoverished, sexually, physically, and psychologically abusive, and utterly dysfunctional for generations. Yet, the jury, after careful deliberation, would ultimately reject this argument for mitigation. They recommended a death sentence. The presiding judge unequivocally concurred. For the temporary, fleeting gratification of his lust, the judge declared, the defendant destroyed an entire family's future. He has forfeited his right to live among us. 9 out of the 12 jurors felt compelled to return to the courtroom to hear the final, definitive sentencing judgment pass down. For many members of the jury, the most difficult, soul-crushing moments of the entire trial had occurred when they were shown the horrific photographic evidence documenting the severe injuries Samantha had suffered. Jury foreman Terry Dancency said those images were almost unbearable to look at, stating they were graphic, unflinching, and absolutely heartbreaking. He affirmed, if anyone in Orange County had ever truly deserved the death penalty, then this man did. He urged all present to reflect. Just imagine that little girl up on that lonely hill. She must have known she would be saved. She must have hoped desperately, but no one came. In the immediate tragic wake of Samantha's murder, the then Governor Gay Davis ordered a swift, statewide expansion of the child abduction alert system. This ensured that urgent emergency messages would instantly appear on electronic billboards along California's vast network of freeways, broadcasting critical information to millions of drivers. According to Sheriff Michael Corona, this new initiative proved to be staggeringly effective. All 47 Amber Alerts, issued under that expanded rapid response system, had subsequently resulted in the children being returned safely home, a testament to the power of community vigilance. Alejandro would later attempt to overturn his conviction by launching an appeal to the California Supreme Court, arguing vehemently that the intense wall-to-wall media coverage had made obtaining a fair trial utterly impossible. He also contended that the judge had committed multiple legal errors, including the critical mistake of refusing his request to move the trial to a different county. The California Supreme Court, however, ultimately upheld both his conviction and his sentence. In their comprehensive ruling, the justices firmly stated that the trial had not been biased and that the staggering weight of the evidence presented in court overwhelmingly supported both the jury's decision to convict and the imposition of the death sentence. Erin Renan found her life's purpose in this outcome. If I could successfully motivate all of those people who cried for Samantha, who cared for her fate, who were outraged by this crime, if I could channel all of that powerful energy toward the countless children we could still protect, then we could prevent these terrible crimes from ever happening again. And that is exactly what we are tirelessly trying to do. More than 100 children have been saved since California's launch of the enhanced Amber Alert system. Among those saved was Tamara Brooks, who learned the painful history behind the statewide abduction alert for the very first time today. What a massive, unbelievable sacrifice was taken, which ultimately saved my life, she reflected. And it broke my heart. It truly broke my heart that it takes horrible, defining moments like this for something good, something truly impactful to come out of it. Erin Renan channeled her hope into the lasting legacy of her daughter, aspiring to teach children everywhere to be brave if they were ever approached by a stranger. She wanted them to know exactly what steps to take, how to get away quickly, and how to reach safety. In the difficult years that followed, she bravely transformed her unbearable grief into powerful, focused advocacy. In her daughter's name, she founded the Joyful Child Foundation. The organization now meticulously works on vital initiatives, such as building robust community child safety networks, conducting sophisticated research into methods for preventing repeat offenses by convicted abusers, and running a range of other innovative programs focused entirely on child protection and the absolute prevention of abuse. Should you wish to learn more about the incredible, life-saving work of the Joyful Child Foundation, we have provided a link to their resources in the description box. Erin maintained that she would never forgive what he did to her daughter, asserting that the only person whose forgiveness should ever be sought was Samantha's. Yet, she explained that her personal way of attempting to forgive him was through the recognition of what his own upbringing had tragically been like. She had sat through the sentencing phase and listened carefully to the chilling details of what had happened to him as a child. Stories of Alejandro and his siblings being mercilessly tied up and viciously beaten. It is no excuse for what he did, absolutely not, she stated firmly. But it is an undeniable fact that he was a victim of horrible crimes himself as a child. We need to prevent crimes against all children, full stop. I share his story for a lot of reasons. People tend to think about child murderers simply as monsters, inhuman entities. But we need to truly understand what creates these monsters is this pervasive, terrifying cycle of violence and abuse. One dedicated person that Erin also connected with was Jan Sepik, the mother of Katie Sepich, whose own tragic case we covered a few weeks ago. Jan and her husband Dave had tirelessly worked to push for Katie's law, named after their daughter, at a federal level. This was a critical measure that provided necessary funding for states to legally collect DNA samples from anyone arrested for a violent felony. Previously, DNA testing was required only after a person had been formally convicted. Erin was deeply moved to hear that Jan, another mother turned advocate, had been inspired by her victims' advocacy work. Samantha Renan was only 5 years old when her life was stolen, but she left behind a light bright enough to fundamentally change and save lives, far beyond the small sunlit courtyard where she had spent her days playing. She was clever, imaginatively vibrant, and full of the kind of raw courage that only young children seem to possess. And as we remember Samantha, and the profound legacy built in her name. It is also crucially important not to forget the other little girl who was with her that tragic day. Despite the unspeakable trauma she endured and the profound fear she must have felt in those terrifying moments, her bravery at such a tender age played a crucial, initiating role in setting the entire investigation in motion. Her quick thinking, her ability to recall vital, specific details, and her presence of mind undoubtedly helped guide detectives straight toward the truth and ultimately toward justice. Erin journeyed to Sacramento, to Washington, D.C., and anywhere else she needed to go to successfully get laws changed. Part of the reason I think I have managed to continue this demanding work for 20 years is because I know that most parents simply can't. They are too broken by grief. And as long as I have the strength, I try to be a voice for Samantha and for every single child who needs one. Just about any piece of child protection legislation you can name, from laws focused on keeping known predators away from minors to combating sexual exploitation on the internet, Erin and her foundation have had an integral hand in navigating the complex process of getting them passed. I like to think that it wasn't for nothing, that a vast number of children have been protected because of her sacrifice. Erin Renan has resolutely refused to let Samantha's story conclude with tragedy alone. She took that overwhelming grief and anger and transformed it into sustained, powerful purpose. Through the tireless work of the Joyful Child Foundation, she has built something truly extraordinary, a lasting, nationwide movement focused on protection and prevention. Because of this unwavering commitment, thousands of children across the country have participated in specialized safety classes that teach them how to recognize danger, how to trust their instincts, and basic self-defense. Communities have been comprehensively trained. Law enforcement agencies have partnered closely with dedicated volunteers. Every lesson taught, every child reached, and every life protected is now, forever, part of Samantha's enduring legacy. Her story continues in the immense strength her mother found, and in the life of every child who is safer today because of Samantha. In every case we examine, there is a moment when the investigation ends, but the lesson remains. The story of Samantha reminds us that safety is not something we can ever take for granted. Even the most familiar places can hide unexpected danger, and the smallest choices, paying attention, staying aware, trusting our instincts, can shape everything. True crime is not just about uncovering what happened, but understanding why it happened, and how we, as a community, can do better. When we learn from these stories, we honor the lives that were changed forever. And when we stay vigilant, we help protect the people who matter most. That is why we tell these cases slowly, carefully, and with respect, so the message reaches those who need it. If this episode moved you, I invite you to stay with us. Your support helps us continue bringing thoughtful, responsible storytelling to the world. Please subscribe, like the video, and turn on notifications so you never miss the deeper truths hidden behind the next case. And when you are ready, explore the other investigations on this channel. Each one carries a lesson. Each one asks us to look closer. Thank you for watching, and for keeping these stories alive in the hope that they help protect someone else.